We thought it was time to talk about your future, Ella, my father said loudly across the Thanksgiving table, his voice cutting through the low, comfortable chatter with sharp clarity. I looked up from my untouched plate of turkey and sweet potatoes, already sensing where this was headed. The entire family was gathered at my parents' home in Portland, Oregon. My younger sister, Chloe, sat with her husband Hunter. My aunt and uncle were there, along with a few cousins I barely spoke to anymore. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks hovered in the air as everyone turned to watch, as if this were a planned performance. My mother leaned forward with a tight, practiced smile that never reached her eyes. She slid an envelope across the polished mahogany table toward me. It landed beside my water glass with a dull thud. "We've been talking, your father and I," she said, her tone coated in quiet superiority. "We think you need a fresh start somewhere else. Somewhere far from here, where you can finally figure things out." I stared at the envelope without touching it. Somewhere far from here. The words echoed in my head. My heart sped up, but my expression stayed neutral. Years of being dismissed had taught me how to hide what I felt. "What is this?" I asked calmly. Chloe, sitting directly across from me, grinned and lifted her phone, angling it in my direction. I saw the faint red recording light. Of course she was filming. She wanted proof of my humiliation, evidence of the moment her failure of a sister was officially pushed out of the family. My father cleared his throat. "Open it." I reached for the envelope slowly, fully aware of every set of eyes on me. Inside was a check for $10,000 and a one-way plane ticket to Austin, Texas, dated for the following Monday. $10,000, my mother said, as if presenting a generous favor. "That should be more than enough to get you settled somewhere new. We chose Austin because it's affordable and has opportunities for people like you. People like me." The words stung, but I didn't react. "We think it's best if you leave Portland," my father added. "You've been struggling here for years, Ella. That little tech thing hasn't gone anywhere. You're 29 and still living like a college student. It's embarrassing." I looked down at the check in my hands. $10,000. A one-way ticket. They were paying me to disappear. Chloe giggled quietly, still recording. Hunter smirked beside her, shaking his head with performative sympathy. "My name is Ella, and I'm 29 years old. I've spent most of my life being treated as the family disappointment. While my younger sister Chloe was praised for every small success, making the cheerleading squad, earning a business degree, landing a marketing job at a mid-sized firm, I was the one who never quite measured up. I was too quiet, too awkward, too focused on computers and coding. I didn't fit the image my parents wanted. When I told them 5 years ago that I was starting a tech company, they laughed. My father said I was wasting my time. My mother told me to get a real job, maybe as a receptionist or administrative assistant. Chloe rolled her eyes and called me delusional, but I kept going. I worked 70-hour weeks, lived in a cramped studio, survived on instant ramen and black coffee. I poured everything I had into building my startup from nothing. I taught myself advanced programming languages, worked with investors, entered pitch competitions, and slowly, painfully, built something real. And that very morning, just hours before walking into this Thanksgiving dinner, I signed the final paperwork selling my company for $8.5 million. I looked up at my parents, at Chloe's pleased expression, at the entire table watching me like a problem finally being removed. They had no idea, not a single clue. I forced a small, controlled smile and folded the check. "Thank you," I said softly. My mother visibly relaxed. My father nodded in approval. Chloe lowered her phone, almost disappointed that I hadn't broken down. "We knew you'd understand," my mother said, patting my hand. "This is for the best. Sometimes people just need a push to move on." I nodded and slipped the check and ticket back into the envelope. My hands trembled slightly, not from shame or sadness, but from anger, quiet, restrained anger I had swallowed for nearly 30 years. They thought they were solving a problem. They didn't realize they were losing the only person in the family who had truly built something. I glanced at Chloe, still holding her phone, likely already thinking about how to post the video. I met her eyes and gave a faint smirk. She frowned, confused. Good. Growing up, I was always the outsider. Chloe was born 3 years after me, and from the start, she was the favorite. Outgoing, charming, effortlessly social. I was introverted, bookish, more interested in dismantling old computers than making friends. My parents never hid their preference. When Chloe earned a B+, they celebrated with praise and ice cream. When I brought home straight A's, they barely noticed. They attended every one of Chloe's debate events. When I won a regional coding competition, they didn't even show up. I stopped trying to impress them around my 16th birthday. I realized nothing I did would ever be enough. So I focused on what mattered to me: technology, problem solving, building things that worked. After high school, I attended a state university on partial scholarship. My parents refused to help with tuition, saying I needed to learn responsibility. At the same time, they paid for Chloe's private college education, bought her a car, and set her up in a nice apartment. I worked 3 part-time jobs, graduated with honors in computer science, and received no support from my family. When I started my company 5 years ago, I kept them out of it. I knew they wouldn't care. I worked quietly and built something extraordinary. And sitting at that Thanksgiving table with their insulting envelope, I understood how little they truly knew about me. My mother kept talking about Austin, about young professionals, and new opportunities. I tuned her out. I thought about the acquisition contract sitting in my lawyer's office. I thought about the $8.5 million that would be in my account within 2 weeks. I thought about a future that didn't include them. Chloe set her phone down and reached for her wine glass, looking satisfied. She thought she had captured my defeat. She had no idea what was coming. They had always treated me as invisible, even while discussing my life as if I weren't there. They saw only what suited them: a failure, a burden, someone to manage. But I wasn't invisible anymore. I had built something they couldn't understand and achieved something they never imagined. I tucked the envelope into my purse and stood up. "Where are you going?" my mother asked. "Just getting some air," I replied evenly. "I'll be back." I stepped onto the back porch, breathing in the cool November air. The Portland city lights shimmered in the distance, and for the first time in years, I felt free. They wanted me gone. Fine. I would leave, but not on their terms. I checked my phone. At the top of my inbox was an email from my lawyer. "Acquisition finalized." "Congratulations, Ella." I smiled. Let them think they won. Let Chloe post her video. In a few days, the truth would come out and everything they believed would collapse. I returned to the table, my expression composed. "Everything okay?" my father asked. "Everything's perfect," I said, and I meant it. Dinner continued, though I barely tasted the food. My thoughts were already ahead. I would cash their check. I would take the flight to Austin, not because they wanted me to, but because I wanted something new, free from their judgment. And I would let them sit in their certainty just a little longer before reality caught up with them. Chloe glanced at me, still smug. I smiled back. She looked away, uneasy. When I think back now, I can trace the exact moments I should have understood they would never truly see me. Like the 8th grade science fair, when I built a working robot from spare parts and won first place. My parents didn't attend. They were watching Chloe sit on the bench at her soccer game instead. There was my high school graduation, where I delivered the valedictorian speech. My mother complained the entire time that the ceremony was too long and that she had a headache. Chloe didn't even bother to attend. There was the day I received my acceptance letter to the state university along with a partial scholarship. My father glanced at it briefly and said, "I hope you're planning to pay the rest yourself." And then there was the moment, 3 years into building my startup, when I made one last attempt to share my progress with them. I arrived at Sunday dinner carrying a prototype of my software, genuinely excited to show what I had built. My father barely looked up from his newspaper. My mother asked if I had thought about finding a job with benefits. Chloe laughed and said I was wasting my time. That was the last time I tried to include them in my life. After that, I stopped attending family dinners. I stopped calling. I stopped hoping they would ever feel proud of me. Instead, I poured every bit of that disappointment and rejection into my work. Every line of code became an act of resistance. Every investor meeting was proof that I was more capable than they believed. Every company milestone pushed me further away from the version of me they had decided I would always be. By the time I walked into that Thanksgiving dinner, I had already left them behind in every way that mattered. The check and the plane ticket were simply confirmation of what I had always known. They didn't want me. What they failed to understand was that I no longer needed them to. I had believed in myself long enough to succeed. Growing up, I was the outsider in more ways than one. While Chloe had playdates and birthday parties, I had coding tutorials and computer manuals. While she learned social dynamics, I learned how to work through complex algorithms. My parents labeled it antisocial behavior. They worried I would never fit in, never find a husband, never live what they considered a normal life. They sent me to therapists to make me more outgoing. They signed me up for activities I hated: dance classes, art camps, youth groups, hoping I would develop better social skills. But I only wanted to build things, solve problems, and create software that changed how people use technology. None of that mattered to them. It wasn't tangible enough or impressive in the way they valued. It didn't fit their definition of success. So they shifted their focus to Chloe, who was easier to understand and easier to shape into what they wanted. I learned how to be alone. I learned to find validation in my work rather than their approval. I learned to measure my worth by what I could create, not by their opinion. It made me stronger and more resilient, though it also left scars that would never fully disappear. Sitting at that Thanksgiving table with their insulting check in my hand, I realized something important. I had already won. The moment I stopped needing their approval was the moment I became unstoppable. They just didn't know it yet. Dinner dragged on endlessly. Relatives chatted about the weather, upcoming holidays, and Chloe's recent promotion. She soaked up the attention, describing her new role with exaggerated enthusiasm while my parents nodded and praised her. "You've always been so driven, Chloe," my mother said proudly. "We're so proud of you." I sat quietly, pushing mashed potatoes around my plate. No one asked me anything. No one even looked my way. It was as if I had already left, as if the envelope they handed me had erased me from the family. When dessert was served, pumpkin pie topped with whipped cream, I finally spoke. I thanked my parents for the check and the ticket, looking directly at them and telling them I appreciated it. My father set down his fork and nodded. He said they were glad I was being reasonable and admitted they had worried I might react badly. I assured them I hadn't and said a fresh start was exactly what I needed. My mother looked relieved and said it was for the best, that I'd been stuck in Portland for too long and a change of scenery would help. Chloe scoffed and said maybe I'd finally find something that worked out. I turned to her, smiling calmly, and said, "Maybe." She looked away, unsettled by my composure. She had expected anger or tears, not quiet agreement, and it clearly threw her off. Hunter leaned back, swirling his wine, and said this was probably the best thing that could happen to me, that some people need a hard reset and a place where no one knows them. His condescension was obvious, but I simply agreed. My aunt finally spoke, saying my parents were generous and that not every family would be so supportive. The word supportive felt hollow, but I replied flatly that I was very lucky. My uncle added that hitting rock bottom often forces people to reevaluate and suggested this might be mine. Rock bottom, as if I hadn't already climbed higher than they could imagine. After dessert, everyone moved to the living room for coffee. I excused myself to use the bathroom but lingered in the hallway, just out of sight. I could hear them talking. My father said it had gone better than expected. My mother agreed and admitted she'd worried I would cause a scene. Chloe laughed and said I had no choice, mocking my work as if it were going nowhere. Hunter commented that $10,000 was generous and accused me of living off their goodwill. My mother said they couldn't cut me off completely because people would talk, and this way they could claim they helped me start over. My father said once I was gone, they wouldn't have to deal with the embarrassment anymore, calling me a burden they'd carried for too long. I stood frozen, fists clenched. A burden. An embarrassment. I had known how they saw me, but hearing it spoken so casually was still painful. My mother whispered that the money was more than I deserved and hoped I wouldn't come back once it ran out. My father joked that if I did, they would ignore my calls. Chloe said she couldn't wait to tell people I had finally left and complained about having to explain why her older sister was such a mess. Hunter laughed and suggested she tell people I moved away to find myself, the usual explanation for failed relatives. The words hit hard, one after another. I took a slow breath and kept myself steady. I couldn't lose control. Not when everything was so close to changing. I walked back into the living room, my expression neutral. My mother asked sweetly if everything was okay. I said it was, and that I just needed a moment. We stayed another hour, making polite conversation. Chloe showed vacation photos from Hawaii, while my parents admired every image. I sat quietly with cold coffee, listening to talk of golf games, book clubs, and Chloe complaining about coworkers she barely worked with herself. The conversation moved around me as if I weren't there. Around 9 o'clock, I stood and grabbed my coat. My father asked if I was leaving. I said yes, mentioning the long drive back to my apartment. My mother hugged me stiffly and wished me luck in Austin, saying she would miss me. I smiled and thanked her. Chloe waved from the couch, telling me to send pictures when I arrived. Hunter raised his glass and toasted to new beginnings. I walked out without looking back. The drive home was silent. I turned off the radio and let the quiet fill the car while replaying the night in my head. They had tried to humiliate me. They had tried to remove me from their lives, and they believed they had succeeded. They had no idea what was coming. Back in my apartment, I opened my laptop and pulled up the acquisition agreement, reading it again to be certain. It was real. $8.5 million, paid in full within 14 business days. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in years, I felt calm. I had built something meaningful, something valuable, something that changed my life. And my parents still had no idea. I spent the weekend packing my apartment and tying up loose ends. I arranged for movers to transport my belongings to Austin, updated my address with the bank, and closed accounts I no longer needed. On Saturday, I met with my lawyer to finalize the last details of the acquisition. She congratulated me again, her genuine warmth a stark contrast to my family's coldness. "You should be incredibly proud of yourself," she said. "What you've built is remarkable. This kind of exit at your age is extraordinary." "Thank you," I replied, and I meant it. On Sunday, I walked through my apartment one last time, packing the final items. My tiny studio had been my home for 5 years. It wasn't much, but it was where I had built my company, spent countless late nights coding and problem solving, where my independence and determination were forged. I felt a pang of sadness leaving it behind, but also anticipation for what lay ahead. Monday morning, I boarded the flight my parents had paid for. Settling into my seat, I opened my laptop and began planning the next phase of my life. Austin greeted me with warmth and sunshine. I took a cab to my new apartment, a spacious 2-bedroom in a nice neighborhood, rented and paid for entirely with my own money. I didn't need their $10,000 to survive, but I cashed the check anyway. It felt symbolic, like accepting their final insult before removing them from my life completely. Depositing it, I watched my account balance grow. $10,000 meant nothing to me now, but I took it to mark the last of their condescension, and they would soon regret it. The first 2 days in Austin were spent settling in and exploring. The city was vibrant and full of energy, and for the first time, I felt at home. On Wednesday, 3 days after Thanksgiving, I sat in a coffee shop near my apartment when my phone buzzed nonstop. Texts and calls from my mother, father, Chloe, and Hunter poured in. I ignored them and opened the news app. Front and center, Portland-based tech startup acquired for $8.5 million. Below the headline was a professional headshot of me, smiling confidently. I read the article slowly. It detailed the acquisition, praised my innovative approach to data analytics, and quoted the acquiring CEO, calling me one of the brightest minds in the industry. It highlighted my background, education, and the 5 years I spent building the company from scratch. My software was described as revolutionary, and the article predicted I would be a major force in tech for years to come. An industry analyst was quoted, "What Ella has accomplished with limited resources is remarkable. This acquisition validates her technical vision and business acumen." I set my phone down, letting it sink in. They all knew now. My phone buzzed again, a voicemail from my mother. Ella, sweetie, we just saw the news. Why didn't you tell us? This is incredible. Call us back. We're so proud of you. 3 days ago, I was an embarrassment. Now I was someone to be proud of. I deleted the voicemail without responding. Another buzz, a text from Chloe. OMG, Ella. I had no idea. Why didn't you say anything? Call me. I blocked her number. My father left a voicemail toggling between pride and desperation. Ella, we need to discuss this acquisition. Call me immediately. I deleted it. They wanted to be part of my success now that it was visible, but it was too late. I spent the day ignoring calls and messages, turning off my phone and enjoying the anonymity of a city where no one knew me as the family failure. That evening, I turned my phone back on. 67 missed calls, over 150 texts. The desperation was clear. My mother pleaded, my father discussed financial implications, Chloe demanded family celebration. I laughed bitterly. They only wanted me now that I had value. Where were they when I struggled? When I worked 3 jobs for college? When I built my company? Now they wanted back in. Even my aunt and uncle sent messages, praising my parents for my success. I typed one sentence to my mother. I'm fine. Don't contact me again. Then I blocked her, my father, Chloe, Hunter, and the extended family who had sat by silently while I was humiliated. I was done. In the following days, the news spread. Journalists, industry leaders, and venture capitalists reached out. I gave select interviews highlighting my journey and vision. When asked about family support, I replied, they've been very supportive. I'm grateful for the foundation they provided, keeping my expression neutral. I owed them no honesty, no satisfaction. Let them read between the lines, wonder why I didn't mention or thank them. Their desperation escalated. They reached out through mutual acquaintances. An old college friend told me my mother had begged her to pass a message along. She says she's sorry. She wants to make things right. I replied calmly, it's too late. When asked if I was sure, I said quietly, they stopped being my parents a long time ago. They made their choice. Now, I'm making mine. A week later, a handwritten letter arrived from my mother on expensive stationery. I almost discarded it, but curiosity won. The letter was long, rambling, full of apologies and excuses. She claimed they had always believed in me, that the check and ticket were meant to help, not hurt me. She wrote about pride, celebration, and wanting to introduce me to friends, a revisionist version of the past, erasing years of neglect. I read it once, tore it into pieces, and threw it away. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, the acquisition funds hit my account, $500,000. I had made it. On my own, without their support, belief, or validation. I was free. I planned my next steps carefully. I invested a significant portion with top wealth managers, donated generously to causes I cared about, women in tech, scholarships for low-income students, programs for young entrepreneurs, and set aside funds for my next venture. For the first time, I felt fully in control of my destiny. Meanwhile, my parents struggled to save face among mutual friends who questioned their lack of support and apparent eagerness to remove me from their lives. My mother reportedly broke down at a holiday lunch when congratulated on having a successful daughter, unable to explain her absence from my business milestones. Chloe's smugness evaporated. The Thanksgiving video she recorded, meant to capture my humiliation, became her own embarrassment. Although she briefly posted it, she quickly deleted it, but the internet never forgets. Screenshots circulated, calling her out for mocking and filming her sister's success. Her carefully curated image, the perfect daughter, the accomplished professional, the enviable younger sister, crumbled in days. I felt no sympathy. They had made their choices. Now they faced the consequences. The calls and messages from my family didn't stop, but their tone shifted over the weeks. Initially, it was pride and congratulations, then confusion and hurt. By mid-December, it turned to anger and desperation. My father left a voicemail that bordered on threatening. Ella, you need to call me back. We deserve to be part of this conversation. You wouldn't have gotten here without us. You owe us that much. Don't forget where you came from. I listened once, then deleted it. He was wrong. I owed them nothing. I had gotten here in spite of them, not because of them. Chloe tried another approach. She sent a long email, apologizing, claiming jealousy, pressure to be perfect, and asserting she never meant to hurt me. She begged for forgiveness and to be part of my life. I read it twice, looking for genuine remorse. There was none. It was performative, designed to manipulate guilt. No specific acknowledgement of her actions, only empty words. I archived it without replying. My mother was the most persistent. She sent flowers, which I donated to a hospital. She contacted my lawyer, who firmly told her to stop. She even tracked me down at a coffee shop in Austin, clutching her purse, eyes red and swollen, trying to spot me. I slipped out the back, uninterested in reconciliation or hearing excuses. 29 years of invisibility had taught me to value myself, not their approval. A month after the acquisition, I was invited to keynote a prestigious tech conference in Seattle. The invitation came directly from organizers impressed by my success. Despite my anxiety about public speaking, I accepted. Weeks were spent preparing, focusing on my journey, challenges, innovations, and lessons learned. I didn't mention my family, but the subtext was clear. I had done this alone. The day arrived. Backstage, my heart raced, but beneath it was excitement, pride, and determination. When my name was called, I walked onto the stage to over 2,000 people, entrepreneurs, investors, developers, industry leaders. Speaking confidently about my company, vision, and plans, the audience engaged, laughed, took notes, and asked insightful questions. Respect and admiration were palpable. Midway through, I noticed two familiar faces in the back row. My parents. My father crossed his arms defensively. My mother clutched her purse. Hope, desperation, perhaps shame in their expressions. I froze briefly, then remembered it was a public event. I breathed deeply, refocusing on those who cared about my work, not my family. The presentation ended to thunderous applause. People rushed to talk, exchange cards, explore collaboration. In the hallway afterward, my parents tried to intercept me. My father reached out. "Ella, wait. We need to talk." My mother, eyes red and mascara smudged, pleaded, "Just give us 5 minutes." I shook my head. "I don't have anything to say to you." My father's face hardened. "You can't just cut us out. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. We gave you a home, food, education." I laughed bitterly. "You paid for nothing, supported nothing, believed in nothing I did. You mocked me, dismissed me, and wanted me gone." My mother reached for my arm. I stepped back. "You didn't love me at Thanksgiving," I said steadily. "You called me an embarrassment, a weight. $10,000 was more than I deserved." Her face went pale. She hadn't realized I had overheard. "You paid me to disappear. You wanted me gone so badly you gave me a ticket and a check. So I left." My father's face reddened. "You're being unreasonable. We put a roof over your head for 18 years. I cut him off. "You did nothing. I paid my own way through college while you bankrolled Chloe. I built my company myself. You didn't believe in me. You didn't support me. You wanted me gone." My mother's voice wavered. "Now we were trying to help you find your way." I stared at her. "Fair? Was it fair you missed my graduation speech? Laughed at my ideas? Told me I'd never amount to anything? Spent thousands on Chloe while giving me nothing?" They had no answer. I took a deep breath. "I don't owe you forgiveness. I don't owe you a relationship. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." My mother reached for me again. I walked away, leaving them in the hallway. I didn't look back. That night in my hotel room, I allowed myself to feel all the suppressed emotion. I cried not for them, but for the girl who had sought love she didn't receive. Then I dried my tears, ordered room service, and began planning my next venture. The following morning, messages from extended family poured in. Some urged forgiveness, others understood. My cousin Brianna, long estranged, sent a message that resonated. "I always knew they treated you unfairly. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. You don't owe them anything. Live your best life. You've earned it." Over the next weeks, I immersed myself in work and my new life. I began consulting for startups, investing strategically in promising companies, especially women-led and underrepresented founders. I started a blog on entrepreneurship, resilience, and cutting toxic relationships. Thousands resonated, sharing stories of their own experiences and thanking me for permission to walk away from those who diminished them. One reader wrote, "I've been trying to earn my father's approval for 40 years. Your story made me realize I never will. And that's okay. I'm enough on my own." Transforming pain into empowerment felt profound. Meanwhile, my parents' social standing eroded. Mutual acquaintances reported they were quietly ostracized for rejecting their daughter while claiming credit for her success. The country club suggested my mother might be more comfortable elsewhere. Networking groups excluded my father. My mother became reclusive, leaving home only for essentials. Their world had narrowed while mine expanded, entirely on my terms. The public shame of being exposed as the mother who had paid her daughter to leave town proved too much for her. Her garden club friends abandoned her. Her book club disbanded after she broke down during a discussion on mother-daughter relationships. My father's small consulting business suffered as clients quietly withdrew, uncomfortable with his treatment of me. In Portland's tight-knit professional community, that reputation damage was nearly impossible to repair. His referral network dried up completely. Chloe's situation was even more dramatic. Her promotion was rescinded after her bosses saw the Thanksgiving video circulating online. Demoted to her original position, he eventually quit, unable to face coworkers. Hunter left her soon after, citing her family drama and cruelty. Their divorce was swift and bitter. He kept their condo. She moved back in with our parents. Through the grapevine, I learned the three of them now lived together in quiet misery, each blaming the others. I didn't take pleasure in their suffering, but I felt no sympathy. They had caused it through their own arrogance and cruelty. 6 months after Thanksgiving, in my Austin home purchased with my acquisition money, I received a call from an unknown number. Curiosity won. "Hello, Ella. It's your father," he said. I considered hanging up. "What do you want?" He paused, then sighed heavily. I wanted to apologize. Truly, genuinely. Not because I want anything from you, but because you need to know I was wrong. I stayed silent, listening. "Your mother and I have reflected on these months. We see how badly we treated you, how completely we failed as parents. We let our insecurities cloud our judgment. We were wrong about everything, Ella, and I'm deeply sorry." His voice cracked with emotion. For a moment, I felt a flicker of acknowledgement. But then I remembered every dismissive comment, every missed event, every time they chose Chloe over me. "I appreciate the apology," I said steadily, "but it doesn't change anything." He continued, "I don't expect forgiveness or to be welcomed back. I just needed you to know we see our failure." "You did," I replied. My mother tried to speak but couldn't stop crying. Chloe also wanted to reach out. "We're all dealing with consequences," I said. There was a pause. "Anything at all we could do to make this right?" he asked. "No," I said simply. "What's done is done." "We're proud of your accomplishments," he added. "You don't get to be proud," I said firmly. "Pride comes from support and belief. You gave me neither." "You're right," he admitted quietly. I hung up, feeling strangely empty, then called my dog Scout and went for a walk in the warm Texas evening. Over the following months, I built a life I was proud of. My Austin home had large windows, a backyard for Scout, a home office for projects, and a small garden. I made genuine friends, joined a women in tech group, and a book club that discussed books rather than gossip. I connected with entrepreneurs who understood my journey. I traveled extensively: Tokyo, Barcelona, New Zealand, Iceland, finally seeing places I dreamed about. I explored new hobbies: rock climbing, pottery, piano. For the first time, I felt whole, complete, and free. I never reconciled with my parents or sister. They occasionally reached out on birthdays and holidays, but I kept my boundaries firm. I owed them nothing. Their $10,000 check and plane ticket had been an attempt to erase me, but instead they freed me to become everything they claimed I could never be. I used that freedom to build something extraordinary. Their lives never recovered. My mother became a recluse, leaving only for appointments or grocery shopping. Her social life vanished. She had built her identity on the perfect family image. When it crumbled, she had nothing left. My father's consulting business collapsed, forcing him to work for a former competitor at a fraction of his previous salary, daily humiliated by his lost reputation. Chloe faced failed relationships and short-lived jobs, ultimately leaving Portland for a small town in Montana, working a grocery store job in a studio apartment. Their lives became a testament to the consequences of valuing image over integrity, cruelty over kindness, and pride over love. As for me, I stood in my sunlit Austin office, Scout at my feet, looking at the vision board for my next venture, a platform connecting underrepresented entrepreneurs with resources and mentorship. I had built a life beyond their comprehension, achieved success beyond their imagination, and found peace beyond their reach. My revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. It was simply becoming everything they said I could never be, completely without them. The best revenge wasn't destruction, it was success, so complete that their absence became their punishment. Sitting down to work on my next project, surrounded by the life I built with my hands, mind, and determination, I realized that the girl who once sat at that Thanksgiving table clutching a check and plane ticket had finally, truly, completely found her way home.